Hello and welcome to Shoot the Hostage with me, Dan, and my partner, Sarah. We're a movie podcast who talks about a different film each week based on a theme. We do swear and we do spoil the featured movie, so only ever listen if you've seen the film or you don't care too much about spoilers. If you're a regular listener, you can just skip forward until you hear the intro music because you've heard all of this before. But if you are new to the show and you do enjoy what you hear, there are a couple of things you can do to help support the show. Firstly, make sure that you're subscribed on your podcast player so you get notified when new shows drop on Mondays. You could rate us 5 stars on Spotify, which couldn't be easier. You just hit the star icon below the show's artwork. Or if you have a spare few minutes, we'd love it if you could submit a review wherever you listen. Make sure you come follow us at STH_pod on social media. We are active on Instagram, X, Threads, and TikTok. And lastly, the biggest thing you can do to help is tell a friend about the show. So that's about it. That's enough preamble from me. Over to me and Sarah for this week's episode. So, episode 6 of 8 in my season about dreams. I made you watch the 13th Floor.
Yeah, you made me watch Dark City again.
No, I only made you watch that once.
All right, it's not exactly like Dark City.
What? Oh, you're saying the 13th Floor is like Dark City?
Yeah.
It's nothing like Dark City. How can you say that?
It is, because it's a late 90s cyberpunk dystopian semi-futuristic sci-fi movie.
Okay, I think that's an unfair comparison.
Fair enough.
Maybe we'll get into that. Because I'm not sure, I don't think you're the first person to make that comparison, but I kind of disagree and find that a bit unfair.
Okay.
But maybe we'll get into that. So, you hadn't seen this before. This was a first time watch for you?
I think so. It was weird because there were moments that seemed familiar, but I don't know if that was just me having deja vu. I don't think I'd seen it before.
Right.
Or maybe in another timeline I watched it. Who knows?
Another reality?
Another
maybe.
simulation, yeah.
But you were aware of it?
Vaguely, yeah.
When it came out? Do you remember it coming out?
No.
Not at all?
No.
Okay.
I think that's true of a lot of people, though, because it was massively overshadowed by The Matrix, wasn't it?
Yeah, it would have been. They were released very close together. The Matrix was released on the 1st of March 1999, and this was released April 16th, 1999 in Denmark, May 28th, 1999 in the United States, and November 25th, 1999 in Germany.
Oh, right. Just in those 3 territories.
I guess other places, I know why Germany was mentioned there, but we'll get onto that.
Oh. Armin Mueller, whatever his name is?
Is he German?
I thought he was a German actor. Is he not?
I've no idea. No,
maybe this is me being xenophobic. Edit this out.
Yeah, I can see why it would have been overshadowed by The Matrix, because the Matrix was the biggest movie of all time. Or not really, but it felt like it at the time, and they were released so close together, so it would have been overshadowed by it. However, I was very much aware of this, and I did watch it pretty soon after it was released, I think.
Did you see it at the cinema?
No, I don't remember seeing it at the cinema.
Did it get a cinema release?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say that it probably did.
This just flew completely under my radar.
Or it would have had it definitely did have a cinema release, but whether or not it was at my local Odeon, I don't know. But it was based on book. Another one based on book. Yeah, a lot of these movies that we choose are based on book.
Simulacron something?
3. Simulacron 3.
Oh.
Or Simulacron 3.
Was Simulacron 1 and 2 any good?
I don't know. It was written by a guy called Daniel Galouye. Galouye.
I like the name Galouye. Let's go with Galouye.
So Daniel Galouye in 1964. 1964?
Yeah, books existed then.
Books about simulation theory? Before computers?
So apparently it was one of the first ever mentions of virtual reality in literature.
Right, okay.
One of. I don't know if it's the first.
Yeah, it's probably quite hard to find that out for sure. And I always think of Philip K. Dick being an early kind of adopter, or certainly has provided the inception of thousands of ideas and sci-fi concepts. But even he was like, what, a decade after that? 70s.
I guess so. I'm not that familiar with him, to be honest.
No, I'm not hugely familiar with him either, other than the monumental contribution that he's had to the sci-fi genre. But yeah, it blows my mind. 1964, they're talking about simulated reality. Like, how? Like,
I can't wrap my head around it now.
It's fascinating. We'll talk about simulation a little bit, maybe.
Oh,
but
good.
yeah, 1964. It was adapted in 1973 for German television.
Oh.
But it was a 2-part miniseries called World on a Wire.
Huh. How was that received?
I'm not sure. It must have been pretty well received because they decided to adapt it. It was sort of interesting enough to make it again, like maybe one of the earliest movies about simulation.
Yeah, it must have been.
I'd really like to check that out, but I think one of these, I don't know if it's a Second Sight or an Indicator or someone like that, I think has put out a version of it. So I might be tempted to procure that.
Huh. World on a Wire.
Yes, not Bird on a Wire.
No, very different film.
Do not procure Bird on a Wire. Yeah, and I think it maybe kind of went away because before digital platforms became a thing, and maybe in the 2000s it kind of got a resurgence because they found a copy and upgraded it or whatever they do and put out new versions of it. So it is out there now, I believe, but for 25 years it was this kind of quite obscure thing that only I guess people that were living in Germany and saw it kind of aired on German television, which I believe the director Joseph Rosnack.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, great. And producer Roland Emmerich.
Less said about him, the better.
Yeah, I'm going to say his name, and then I'm never going to mention him again.
Let's move on.
I although Moonfall's underrated, I feel like.
By who?
Everyone. It's a fun movie. That's terrible, but
agree to disagree.
Really fun. That's due a rewatch soon.
No,
actually.
Never. That's definitely one you can watch on your own.
Yeah, all right.
So whose name was I getting wrong? Is it Armin Mueller-Stahl?
Oh, no, I think that's right.
Is that right?
That's what I've written down, yeah.
Because
I don't know if he's German, though.
I thought he was German. Look, I don't know. But the first thing we hear in the movie... Oh, good. He might be.
He's probably German.
The first thing we hear is him doing a voiceover, and literally for like the first sort of 20 seconds, I was just like, is that Werner Herzog?
Right, yeah.
It sounded so much like him, which kind of removed me from the plot a little bit.
Yeah.
I was finding it hard to pay attention to the words that he was saying because I was so caught up with this picture of Werner Herzog in my head.
Mm. For me, he's one of those, that guy faces. I'd never known his name, and I couldn't tell you anything else that he was in other than the ones that I wrote down for part of my research.
Oh. Which were?
The X-Files, and I think that's the movie. The Game, the Fincher one. Probably something I would have seen him in.
That's due a rewatch.
He was nominated for an Oscar in 1996 for Shine.
Was he? Is that the one with Jeffrey Rush?
I was going to say Combs, but almost certainly it's Jeffrey Rush. Yeah.
Okay.
Which I haven't seen and doesn't really look like my kind of thing. But
I believe it's a biopic.
Is it? About a bloke called Shine?
Yeah.
Or is it a sequel to The Shining?
No, but it's in the same universe.
Is it?
Yeah.
Set at the Overlook?
Yeah.
Is he the piano player at the Overlook? Or...
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Tinkling the old ivories.
Yeah.
It's funny you should say that, actually, because I thought of The Shining almost immediately in this movie.
Did you? Why?
Why? Because after we've had the narration by, what was his name? Hanlon or Fuller? Or Hanlon Fuller? Or...
Hannom Fuller, I've written down, but it's probably Hannon. Fuller. We'll just say Fuller.
Fuller, okay. Yeah, he sort of leaves money on the side of the bedside table for a lovely lady that's still sleeping. Mm-hmm. And I've got to be honest, if that's how much sex work paid in the 30s, I feel a lot of people were sleeping on that.
How much did he pay?
It looked like about $200, which I looked up and would be about $5,000 now.
Right. That's good, isn't it?
$5,000?
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't want to sleep with Armin Mueller-Stahl for any less than that.
I would do it for less than that.
I'm sure you would. Your numbers are always lower than mine. But yeah, that's quite a handsome payday.
Mm.
But yeah, he goes downstairs in this grand hotel and sees Vincent. You've always been the caretaker here, D'Onofrio.
Right, got ya.
And yeah, so immediately my brain went to The Shining, but it often does. So
yeah, we kind of wake up. The movie begins in what we find out is the middle layer of a set of simulated realities.
Or is it?
Well, it's the filling of the simulation sandwich that we are shown.
Yes.
I have my own thoughts on the ending.
I'm sure you do.
Subjects that I've thought about deeply.
Okay,
particularly over the last 3 or 4 days.
So, consider me just a blank book. Is that a phrase?
A blank slate.
A blank slate. Yeah. Blank book is the same. Like, I'm without words. There are no words on me. Explain simulation theory. Dumb it down for big idiots like me.
Remember in our dream scenario show, we mentioned Nick Bostrom.
Yes.
Now, Nick Bostrom did not come up with the idea of simulation theory.
He just propagated it?
But I feel like
proliferated?
Our modern interpretation of it, or the fact that we're having a conversation as often as we are, is maybe because of him. And obviously because of movies like this and The Matrix as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they go back to books that were written, and obviously, as we've discussed, in the 60s and 70s. But I think what Nick Bostrom did is, and I believe it was a paper in the 90s or early 2000s, and he sort of said, I believe that there's these 3 rules for the simulation argument. He said, number 1, the simulation can never be created or has never been created. Number 2, it's possible to create a simulation, but we've decided not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And number 3, we're definitely in a simulation. So that has been the basis of a lot of people's thoughts on this for a long time. And it's a compelling way to think about it. It doesn't fully work. I don't think you can boil down the complexities of a universe with 3 kind of human imagined rules such as that. I feel like that's way too basic, but it's an interesting jumping off point.
Well, yeah, so why has he simplified it so much? Why is he so convinced it's one of those 3?
I think Bostrom, I'm not sure whether he thinks that we are in a simulation or not. There are certain philosophers and scientists that do. Donald Hoffman is one that believes that we are in some kind of simulation, but it's slightly different. But I think with Bostrom, it's a numbers thing, I think, primarily, because if you think there has to be one reality that creates a simulation, and that we'll call that the real reality, base reality, I think they refer to it.
Okay.
So say that's base reality.
Mm-hmm.
Say we're in base reality now, and we create a simulation, most likely to be something from our past, so we can learn something, whatever. 1937 is a good example of that. So say we make that, and then the simulated reality makes another reality, and then that simulated reality makes another reality below that, like the
episode of Rick and Morty.
Rick and Morty episode that we spoke about. Yeah, exactly.
It means peace among worlds.
Yeah, precisely. It's exactly that. So if you take that into consideration, and that potentially could go on indefinitely, then that means that there's one base reality and millions, billions of simulated realities. So I think the argument is, which one are you most likely to be in? It's a probability thing, which is very compelling and it's interesting to think about, but it's completely unknowable and untestable. So it's philosophy, it's not really science, but it's fascinating to think about.
I don't really know where to go after that. I struggle to wrap my head around these concepts. I do. Do you believe we're in a simulation? Just out of interest? You do.
No, the honest answer is I don't know. But it's the same. It's the same.
But it's
the same as someone says to me, "Do you think that there's a God?" I don't know.
Well, I'm not asking you what you know. I'm asking you what you believe.
But it's faith. You're talking about faith. The answer is I don't know. If I have to say yes or no, gun to my head, I don't really know, but I'm going to say yes based on the numbers, because I'm a numbers guy.
That's what I wanted.
Probabilities. Okay.
But that's what I was looking for.
I don't really necessarily think that. because
Okay.
I'm sort of subscribed to the idea that we're human beings and we couldn't possibly comprehend concepts like that. I don't think we have the tools to be able to figure out what's going on 100%. I don't think we ever will.
I certainly do not.
No.
I can only speak for myself, but
Okay. But I don't know. What do you think that we are in a simulation?
I don't know, because it's not something I've spent very long thinking about, unlike you.
All right. New question.
Yep.
Does it matter?
No.
Why do you say that?
Because I don't know. My reality is real to me.
Yeah. I think, therefore, I am.
That Descartes quote again.
I thought it was Popeye.
Yeah, it's a tough one, but no, I don't think it does matter.
I agree with you. I agree. We've still got to pay our rent. It's the same thing with this alien situation. One day maybe they'll turn up, maybe they won't. Again, I don't know anything about that. Well, I know a lot about it, but I don't know what we're being presented is true or not.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it doesn't matter in our day-to-day. We still have to pay our rent. We still have to feed ourselves. I enjoy talking about this stuff and thinking about this stuff deeply, and it's always been a very deep part of me, is thinking about these concepts in a very deep and philosophical way. But I sort of go around in circles and drive myself a little bit mad because I can never figure it out. But in later life, I've sort of learned how to let go a little bit and just enjoy thinking about it and all of the different ideas. Like I listened to a 3-hour podcast called Theories of Everything with Kurt Jaimungal, who has proper scientists on there and he has some fringe scientists on there sometimes as well. And it's a really nice in-between point between, because quote unquote real scientists are like, they're way too cynical, like fuck off, I don't believe in anything, you're Santa Claus, and it's a bit dismissive. And then you got the other end, people are just like, we're on a flat earth, like let's have a discussion somewhere in the middle, like whether you believe things or not, let's unpack those ideas. And
he's the middle ground between the scholars and the nutters. Yeah,
kind of, but he's an intellectual himself and he knows what he's talking about. I believe he was a physicist. But he had a 3-hour documentary with Donald Hoffman and Stephen Wolfram, and they both had sort of similar ideas about simulation, but presented completely differently. And what strikes me is that when you boil it all down to everything, you could just replace the word simulation with God, or it's not. What are we talking about here? It's about how our perception of something rather than how it works.
It's funny to me how people dismiss simulation theory so easily when organized religion is so prevalent in almost every society. Why is one so easy to dismiss and the other isn't? Because as you just said, they're kind of two sides of the same coin almost.
Yeah, I think that they are really in a lot of ways. And I think one of the reasons that I find simulation so appealing as a concept is that it would explain a lot. The thing that they touched on in Matrix 2 Reloaded, which is I quite like.
Someone had to.
Kind of underrated, but it's better than the third one. but something that explored with the ghosts and the werewolves and the vampires, they're like, they're all part of different simulations or whatever. So that could maybe explain why people see those things and have those events. The other thing that I think about that is actually a proper scientific problem is the double slit problem, where something's being observed, it behaves differently. Quantum entanglement.
Jesus Christ.
But these really bizarre things that shouldn't work the way that they do in our universe as we know it, I think you can accept them under the umbrella of simulation theory. I think the thing that Schrodinger's cat.
Mm-hmm.
There's that.
Well, that's tied into the being observed thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the reason why I think that works within the simulation theory is that if whoever has built, say we're in a simulation, whoever has built that simulation is going to make it in the most efficient way possible. And how do you do that? Well, you only render what the consciousness can perceive. So we can, with our human eyes, we can see, what is it, 3 miles, something? Like along the water, something like that. So
Speak for yourself. I'm lucky if I can see 250 feet.
but there's a cut-off point. So who's to say that everything outside of that doesn't exist? You know, I don't know what I believe when it comes to that. Just don't know. But I feel like with the simulation argument, a lot of things become kind of the more stranger elements, things that we know, kind of make a bit more sense in that, and that's why it's a very compelling thing to think about.
Well, okay, so to add to this, I'm going to talk about it from an autistic perspective, because I learned about something recently that I've always felt since I was a child, as long as I can remember, but that I only found out via social media that other people feel this way as well. Somebody talked about it online and everybody else was like, oh my God, I thought I was just weird. And it's called the invisible camera.
Okay. What's that? I've not heard of it.
Just feeling like you're being observed at all times. It's really strange.
Like God.
Like God. I used to think it was kind of a religious hang-up from my upbringing. I used to think it was almost like, you know, how people talk about Catholic guilt. Like, oh, mustn't put a foot wrong. I'm being watched all times.
Well, God sees everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's sort of, in my head, I tied it to that. But apparently it's just a neurodivergent thing that people report all over the world.
Fascinating.
Crazy.
Not heard of that before.
Maybe we're just more evolved. We know.
I thought you was gonna bring up Mandela effect. That's where I thought you was going with that.
No, but I do love going down a Mandela effect rabbit hole. You know I do.
Yeah. But again, could maybe fit in with simulation theory. You know, that's our creators updating something, and there's some like residual memory of that thing that never happened. Yeah,
there's some movie where Cedric the Entertainer was a genie. I don't know. I can't remember, but
the Monopoly guy had a monocle.
Fruit of the Loom had a cornucopia. Yeah,
all of those. I know. Again, that's another idea that kind of fits in with that.
It is strange.
It is strange, and it's most probably just a weird memory thing.
Yeah, collective misremembering.
Memories are not that reliable, really,
no.
And they change. So it's probably a memory problem. But
probably.
It's, again, really interesting to talk about.
Yeah.
And think about. And there's a bunch of things that fit into this theory, I think, if you want them to. Maybe I'm sort of trying to crowbar them in a little bit, but I don't know. I do feel like I'm sort of connecting a lot of dots here, and maybe I might go insane.
I think you may have passed that point already.
Get some
slightly.
tin foil and buy a caravan. Move to the equator.
I thought you were going to say just park it on the driveway and live in there.
Oh, we could do that. Yeah.
I'd like the
council
privacy.
Tax, though, wouldn't I?
So, you know what we should talk about?
What?
The 13th floor.
Yeah, okay. Why do you think it's called the 13th floor? Any ideas?
Well, my theory is that a lot of hotels don't have a 13th, like it doesn't exist because of superstition.
Yeah.
Is that why?
That I don't know for sure, but I think that's my thought on it. Yeah, definitely. I've worked on construction projects where there are no 13th floor.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind. I was like, really?
Oh, people are that superstitious.
Right, okay, well, fine, whatever. But yeah, hadn't thought about it until we sat down to watch this. And
no, me either.
And considered why it was called the 13th floor, because they could have just called it World on a Wire again, which probably would have been, or maybe a bit spoilery, I don't know, in this day and age. But 13th floor I thought was a good title given what we've just discussed, for sure.
How do you feel about the cast in this?
Other
than Craig Bierko being quite fun to say.
Craig Bierko, I think he actually does quite well in this. I don't love his Douglas Hall character. He feels a bit bland, but I feel like the other characters are very good. So it's definitely a performance choice.
Yeah.
Or a direction.
I mean, look, I definitely do not care for his performance. I think they were all tasked with something quite difficult in that almost everybody in this had to play a dual role.
Yeah. Well, he had 3 roles.
And And I think that was a bit too much for Mr. Bierko.
Okay.
And I don't know what it is about his face, but I associate him with comedy. Genuinely. I think he's got kind of a goofy face.
Do you?
And I swear to God, I've seen him in a comedy or something. I associate him with being in comedies. Maybe I'm way off base here, But for that reason, I found him quite difficult to take seriously in this role.
Okay.
And I just think he was boring.
I thought the middle layer, Douglas Hall version of that character was very bland.
Yeah,
and
but you
dull.
think he was supposed to be?
I think he was kind of supposed to be. I definitely think that was a choice. Given that, had we not had the other two characters of Ferguson and whatever the bad guy was called above him, had they not been in it, I might not have given it much thought and thought, oh, that wasn't a great performance. But actually, I do think it was a good performance because they are all so different and they feel like different characters to me. And I really get that. So I do think it was by design. And I think he was quite good in this, actually. And it was his screen debut.
Was it?
Yeah, he'd been in, I think, plays and stuff before that. But I believe this was the first... what is his screen debut? I've written down he was in The Long Kiss Goodnight, which I'm pretty sure was before. Oh, Long Kiss Goodnight was his screen debut.
That was that 96? 97?
Yeah, I think it was about 96, I would say. Rennie Harlan, Shane Black movie, which is good and decent. Haven't seen that in a while. What about Gretchen Mol as Jane Fuller?
She was all right.
I thought she was great. Again,
as soon as she shows up, she's very sort of classically film noir femme fatale.
Well, she's presented that way, isn't she?
Yeah,
you're right. And even the detective is like, oh, there's a broad in here.
Yeah.
But she's got that kind of look. And I was kind of rolling my eyes a bit going, oh, we're not going to get another lounge singer, are we? And we didn't.
Yeah.
And I'm glad about that. But I thought that she was particularly good when she becomes the other character, the one that works in the supermarket.
Yeah.
And again, completely different characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like I almost didn't see Jane in that. And I thought that was a spectacular transition there. I thought she was really great. And I would have liked to have seen more of her character in this, maybe. Although I didn't love the romance aspect of this.
Oh no, that's in my notes. We'll talk about that. It didn't work for me at all.
Not needed. But I think in a movie that's got Vincent D'Onofrio in it, he's probably going to be the most interesting thing in that movie.
Oh, he's going to act circles around everyone.
Yeah. And again, he's not in it as much as I remembered. He's not even... I mean, Vincent D'Onofrio's in it, so you must think, he's the bad guy then. And he is.
Yeah,
but he's not the bad guy. He's a bad guy.
He's a bad guy, yeah. It's funny, you're right. He's not on screen a huge amount. He's on screen a fair bit.
More in the first half, yeah.
Yeah, but he's what I remember.
Mm.
He makes such an impression. That's what I remember.
Yeah, he's very good.
Going back to Gretchen Mol for a second, is she still acting? I can't remember the last time I saw her in anything.
I'm not sure. She was in... around about the same time, you've got Donnie Brasco and one of my favourites, Rounders.
I knew you were going to say Rounders.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's one of the things I remember her from. And she was in a film called The Notorious Betty Page, playing Betty Page, obviously, which I believe was directed by Mary Harron.
Oh, Mary Harron of American
Psycho.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it was all right. And she was pretty good from what I remember. But yeah, I can't remember the last thing I saw her in.
No, me neither.
She's definitely one of those actresses that seems very much like of an era.
The 90s.
Yeah.
Which is a shame because, as I say, like there's a couple of really good scenes with her in.
Yeah.
And I would like to see more of her, not just in this, but just in general, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what did we not get? What projects did she not get that we could have had more Gretchen Mol in?
I don't know. But yeah, Vincent D'Onofrio. What can you say, really, that hasn't already been said? Where would you place his acting on a scale from like a Full Metal Jacket to a Men in Black?
What, in this?
Yeah. On a sliding scale of strange. Because he always plays like a larger-than-life character, doesn't he?
I don't really know how to answer that. I just really liked his performance in this.
Yeah.
I don't know. If you're saying strange, obviously Men in Black is really out there.
That's maximum strange.
But
yeah, that's at the top of the spectrum.
An alien bug.
Yeah.
So,
really well.
Yeah.
I think that's his best work.
Give me water and sugar. More. Yeah, it was good in this. Sort of unhinged in some aspects, understated in others. And again, can see the distinction between characters really, really well. And there's some really lovely moments where he just has a little smile or something, and he does the Vincent D'Onofrio thing that he does so well. Full Metal Jacket, I don't know if I've seen that for a long, long time. Maybe I haven't seen it. Maybe it's one of those I haven't. but I'm pretty sure I have, if that makes sense. I may not have, just because it's sort of in the zeitgeist. And I sort of
one
just
that you
got that
feel
memory
like
of it.
you've seen.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. Yeah. He's always memorable. I'll give him that. So why did Fuller choose to recreate 1937?
Well, they say in the movie that it was the era of his youth.
Yeah.
So must be that.
So he just wanted to go back to his peak.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's fair.
Or like a nostalgic thing.
I personally don't think I would want to go back to a time before moon cups and Wi-Fi.
What's moon cups? What does that mean?
Google it.
Okay.
Now's not the time.
Okay.
But if you could pick a time to recreate, I mean, it doesn't actually have to be a time in history. If it's just a simulation, it can be anything, right?
It's the Great Oxidation Event. I want to see how life began.
Really?
Yeah. I'm not interested in life already being here. I can see life now. You're alive. That's interesting. You're a collection of cells, and that's fascinating. But how did it happen?
But so scientifically, would you be able to even observe that?
Well, if we do I'm not going to spoil this show, but you take some of the concepts in the show Devs.
Yeah.
There's probably a way, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I think maybe not. That honestly that's my honest answer. But there's probably a bunch of stuff that I'd want to see. Dinosaurs, obviously. What did they look like? Did they have feathers? What happens if you wave a flare in their face? Do they care? Will they run away? Can you point your fingers at them and they'll do whatever you say?
Yeah, did they all defer to Chris Pratt?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, a bunch of stuff, man.
You are so much more fascinating than I am.
What? Nah.
My simulation would just be a world in which I didn't have to work and I could eat all the chocolate I wanted without putting weight on.
Oh, do you have to live in this simulation? Because I can't live.
You don't have to live in it, but like, I would want to.
Visit
it. If that was a potential.
Well, Fuller's first idea is to just go back to the 30s and just bone cigarette goers, as you said. Which I'm guessing that would be what a lot of people do.
Men, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of. Well, so you're going to like 3 weeks ago, as long as you got Wi-Fi with moon cups.
Yeah.
Okay. Fascinating. But
it would be a different reality.
Okay.
Like you can make anything, right?
So
like physics could be different. Everything could be different, right?
Yep. So you could potentially play out any and every scenario, as long as you live, I guess, as long as you survive, that you could think of.
Yeah.
Change it like tiny variables 30 years ago and see how that affects present day or whatever.
Or actually, maybe I would want to be in San Junipero so I could romance Mackenzie Davis in the 80s.
Okay.
I've changed my mind. It's that one.
So you're going to create a simulation in which the simulation creates a simulation.
Yeah. Of a Black Mirror episode.
As long as Mackenzie Davis is in it.
Yeah.
Okay. So this movie, the setup of it is kind of a mystery, right? It's that neo-noir thing that we've spoken about, and as you sort of compared it to Dark City in that way.
Well, it definitely has echoes of it. I know you think that comparison is a little bit unfair, but I think it's valid in terms of the structure of the film.
Yeah, I think there are comparisons to be made to that. I just think that I feel a little bit bad for this movie in that it was dismissed because of that. I feel like you've got The Matrix, Dark City, and they're like, that's a 13th Floor. But I actually think this is way more interesting than the Dark City.
Do you?
I do like Dark City. We spoke about that in quite detail a few weeks ago.
We did.
Go have a listen. But I think I prefer this movie just because it's a bit more... it's a bit more thought-provoking in the concepts it's presenting and the kind of the deep thinking that it ignites in me. Dark City is more just a bit of a popcorn time, I think.
I see what you're saying, but I think I would want less of Craig Bierko's stupid face and more goth Richard O'Brien.
Okay. But so it does start as a mystery, this one, and it starts it starts in the 30s, and then Fuller comes out of the simulation, goes into his reality, which is 1999, presumably, and he gets murdered. And we don't know why or who committed this murder, but then Craig Bierko is like, he wakes up in his apartment and he's got a bloody shirt.
Yeah.
And one thing that bothered me about watching this is that starts getting questioned by Detective McBain.
Dennis Haysbert.
Yeah, we might as well have paused the world and you went, Dennis Haysbert. Well, I've never heard that name in my life, but again, he was good. He was good.
The president in 24.
Oh, I have maybe seen 12 minutes of 24 in my life.
Wasn't he in Heat?
I don't remember him in Heat, but I'm sure that you're correct. Usually are with these things.
Can you say that again?
You usually are with these things.
Thank you. So McBain starts sort of breathing down his neck.
Yeah, so Detective McBain, so he's like questioning Douglas Hall, who's Craig Bierko's character, and I feel I'm a little bit annoyed because quite quickly Hall is like, well, I might have done it, I just can't remember it. And I was like, really? Like,
never admit to anything.
No, but he seemed he was just like matter of fact about it. He was, like, if I thought that I might have accidentally killed someone and not remembered it, I'd be freaking the fuck out.
Well, that's one of the reasons I didn't love his performance, if I'm being honest, because I didn't buy some of his reactions.
Okay. I didn't. I thought it was, I agree in that I found it quite jarring at the time. Like, why you just, no, I didn't do this. I don't remember doing this. I have no memory of it. If I don't remember it, did it really happen? There's that too.
If my boss is murdered in a forest, but there's no one around to see it.
Yeah. There's a different postcode. But I feel like, having thought about it a bit more, again, like, maybe he's just onto something with the simulation, you know. Maybe because he has created a simulation in his reality, he's having these thoughts that we were touching on earlier about probability, and maybe he's thinking, well, maybe I am in a simulation. There's a good chance of that now that I've created one, and I know that it's entirely possible to create a reality indistinguishable from my own. Maybe I am in one.
Imagine if that's your daily life.
Making a computer game.
I just go to work and make jewellery. Imagine talking about virtual worlds.
Interesting.
It's nuts. It's so beyond the realms of my comprehension. Like, it's sci-fi to me.
It is sci-fi, yeah.
But you know what I mean?
But it's all made up. It's all
based on assumption and educated guesses.
Yeah.
And
like I said earlier, it's not science. It's philosophy, really, because it can never be tested. But the fact that he knows that he can create a simulation. If I created a simulation and I went in and I can't tell the difference between this reality and the one I'm in with the goggles on or whatever, then I am thinking, fuck, mine might be. Like, there's no way to know.
But then he seems shocked when he finds out that he is in a simulation.
Yeah, but you can suspect something, but not be sure. Like, I don't know, you can, and even when you find out, you can be shocked by it, you know.
I guess.
Even if you suspect it, you can still be like, oh shit, fuck, okay. Everything I've ever known is fake.
I'd be relieved by that in some aspects.
Yeah.
Although, I don't know, maybe I would just go full nihilistic. Just be like, I don't have to fucking pay my rent now. Nothing's real.
But it doesn't make a difference, though.
No, I know. I'm joking.
That's the kind of it being completely irrelevant. Fun to think about, but regardless of the outcome, it doesn't really matter for us.
If anybody from the local council's listening, I'm still going to pay my taxes. Don't you worry.
I quite like a lot of how this film looks as well. I think the stuff in the 30s where they've shot a real street and they've added in post tram lines and they've extended the streets and stuff. There's some before and after pictures on the DVD.
Okay.
And it looks great. Like some of that stuff was done really, really well on a budget, I think, of 18 million. And I do think quite a lot of it looks nice. And there's some really lovely aerial shots as well of buildings where they're showing the reflections in the glass, and it kind of warps and fits in with the tone of the film perfectly. That looks really good. Mm-hmm. There's a really beautiful frame towards the end of the movie where they've captured a storm and some lightning. That was all real.
Oh,
they were
wow.
out for 3 days on a helicopter and captured all of those aerial shots in those 3 days. So I feel like there's some stuff in this that is really, really well done. And not least that stuff, like the way it was shot and how it looked and what they managed to achieve for, fairly cheap budget. I mean, there's not a lot of that sort of thing in this. It is quite. I hesitate to say that some of it feels a little bit TV movie sometimes.
What, some of the 1937 stuff?
A bit. It just feels a little bit melodramatic. It's like,
I know what you mean.
Cases, in some instances, occasionally,
like they've distinguished it by sort of desaturating the color grading a little bit.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
But I mean, they clearly went to some lengths, kind of with the costuming and like the period cars and all of that stuff.
It's not cheap to hire period action vehicles and clothes, and when you're doing mostly two different eras in one movie, it's got to be quite expensive. Plus, not to mention the digital effects. There's not a great deal of digital effects, but what they do, I think, is good enough and works for the movie.
I don't know how much green neon lights cost.
Well,
that denote tech in the 90s.
Not much. I mean, I did it in my room in 2003. I bought a laser from the DJ shop and I filled my room with smoke with a smoke machine, and you're projecting lasers across the room, and it looks phenomenal, and it really works in this as well.
Did you pretend that you were stealing precious artworks from museums?
Yes, I dressed as Catherine Zeta-Jones and was bending under the lasers.
I mean, be honest, you were just having a little one-person rave, weren't you?
Yeah, it was a two-person rave, actually.
Oh, right, sorry. I want to talk a little bit more about the romance element, because you said you didn't think it worked either, so I'm curious as to find out why.
Just unnecessary.
Yeah. I'm a big advocate of just keeping male-female heterosexual relationships platonic unless it really informs the story in some way, and I don't think it did here.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it definitely needs to inform the story in some way. I mean, most of the time, I just don't give a shit about that. Like, I'm here for the simulation stuff. Piss off with your human drama.
But I understand why they would include it to some degree. I don't know why I'm now playing devil's advocate for this movie. I didn't like it either. But I guess for them, it's sort of more bombs on seats, more tickets sold. Like,
yeah, I don't know.
Not to generalize or potentially be quite sexist, but I imagine the intended audience for something like this was predominantly male. Whereas if you include a romance angle, that's them and their partners buying tickets.
Yeah, that's probably
cynically,
realistically what that is. Yeah,
that's probably studio heads. That's their idea of more tickets sold, right?
Yeah, probably.
But yeah, I didn't like a lot of the dialogue between them. I quite liked some of the interactions, don't get me wrong, but I didn't like some of the dialogue. And some of it was just downright creepy. Like, I think it's sort of implied that they've had sex for the first time. And she's just sleeping. I think she wakes up and she's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, watching you dream." I wish you fucking wouldn't, you creepy so-and-so.
Yeah.
Like, who's finding that romantic?
I don't know.
Bella from Twilight, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I completely agree. Really shoehorned in. I understand why they did it to some degree for the sort of jealousy partner kind of angle.
Oh, right. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
I guess her partner in the quote-unquote assumed base reality. Yeah,
I guess so, but like unnecessary really, because when you find out that let's say the prime version of Hall, as you're led to believe, is killing people, he says, "Well, I'm just doing it because it's fun." So why, if you're not going to explain why he's doing that, then why do you need to explain that he's jealous? Just have him being a knobhead then. Yeah,
he's unhinged, clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. And I didn't find that they had much chemistry either. But that's just personal opinion.
So what do you think about the ending then? Because what happens is that the movie begins in the 30s, Fuller exits the application, and we see that he's in the 90s, and at the end of the movie, Douglas Hall exits the application of the 90s and finds out he's in a simulation that's in 2024, this very year.
Yeah.
June 21st, 2024.
Yeah.
Which was just a few short months ago when this episode comes out. So we're presented with three layers. Were you expecting that ending? That Douglas was also part of the his own simulation?
I don't really know. I don't think so, no, because this was a first time watch for me, so I was just kind of drinking it in rather than trying to second guess it.
Yeah.
I suppose it's hard to do that and make notes and like, so I didn't really have any expectation.
Okay.
What about you?
New question.
Okay.
New question for you. When they're in 2024, do you think that's based reality?
No.
What makes you say that?
The way it ends, like the kind of, what do you call it? The effect, like it when you're turning off an old school TV.
Yeah. It's definitely hinted at, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like it's they're not saying definitely this is also simulation, but I think you have to end it that way because what's the point in having just two simulated realities? And really, we spoke about probabilities. Oh, if you're in one and you find out you're in one that's inside another one, it probably goes on forever, right? So I do enjoy that ending. And there was an alternative, I don't know, say version of it, but there was, I believe the first cut that they tested with audiences was when Douglas Hall Prime is killed in Douglas Hall's body by Detective McBain. Douglas Hall's, the middle version of him, goes up to base reality and he wakes up in 2024. What was I saying? I've confused even myself.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. That was an alternate ending.
Right, alternate ending. That's where I was. So when he gets killed, what the original ending was that he wakes up, but he's in a dark room, and the camera zooms into his face, and you don't see anything. You just sort of see his face. I don't know with what expression that would have been, surprise, horror, whatever. But it was just essentially a dark room, and so it hinted at that he's gone somewhere else. But audiences didn't like that, and they said it was a bit bleak. So they added in this shiny 2024 version of reality, which I think is probably the correct move. And I say that because usually I quite enjoy a bleak ending.
Me too.
It makes me think about it a bit more. But I think in this, you can kind of have your cake and eat it, because you're going to show that he wakes up and he thinks that he's in base reality. But that character, given what we've discussed while he was in middle reality, in 90s reality, maybe had some idea that he may have been a simulation himself. He's just going to keep going, and is he just going to keep trying searching for the layer above the one that he's in? And I feel like the ending of this movie could be received in one of two ways. The first way is, oh, it's a happy ending. Great. They got together. They are going to live happily ever after in these sea castles in 2024. But the other ending which is the ending I think is more realistic and is hinted at with the switching off of the monitor, as you say, is that he's also in another simulation, and it will just keep going indefinitely. I'm
getting a headache. I'm genuinely getting a bit of a migraine coming on.
But I think that was the correct choice, because it is a way to, I think it's a more interesting ending as well.
Yeah,
because it can be read multiple ways.
I guess it's sort of more rewarding for the viewers that have been paying closer attention, and like a lot of people would just see that and think nothing of it, I guess. But yeah, the expression on Craig Bierko's face, I'm pretty sure, would have been vacant,
right? Since
that appears to be what he's most capable of.
That's what he was going for. Yeah, that was the direction he was given.
Just empty. Yeah, nothing going on. Yeah. So the 13th Floor.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would watch this again, if I'm being perfectly honest. I have beef with Joseph Rusnak based on his resume.
I am not familiar with him at all. I saw that he did a movie called No Strings Attached, which I thought had Ashton Kutcher in it for some reason, but it didn't. It was another No Strings Attached. But he's done like a Wesley Snipes action thing or something.
He was an assistant director on that late 90s Godzilla movie.
Oh, yes. Yes, he was. You're right. He was an AD on that, yeah.
And he remade one of my favourite Larry Cohen movies, It's Alive.
Okay.
And it is one of the worst horror remakes I have ever seen in my entire life, without exaggeration.
Interesting.
Do not watch that movie. So yeah, I think you're right in that there's some really interesting ideas here. I don't think he's necessarily a very talented director.
Okay. I think that some of the decisions made in this, if this is the only movie of his that I'd seen, and it is, to me, he seems like, actually, he's quite an interesting director that's got some good ideas and did a lot with a little. But
they're not his ideas.
Well,
really.
Who knows? They exactly. They may have been other crew members' ideas, production designers, art directors.
The guy who wrote Simulacron 3.
Well, there's that too. The fact that it is a reimagining of an original idea that was already adapted. There's probably a bunch of stuff and that you can crimp from. So maybe there's an element of fluke in that. I don't know, but yeah, it's not someone that I'm familiar with at all.
Probably for the best.
Okay.
What would you compare this movie to? Obviously, we've talked about The Matrix. We've talked about Dark City. Are there any other comparisons you think you could make?
I watched a few months ago David Cronenberg's Existence.
I have Existence written down.
Okay. When's the last time you watched Existence?
Ooh, probably, I don't know, maybe 2004. It's been a long time.
Because you see, I saw Existence. Is that also 1999?
I think it was late 90s, yeah.
I think it was, yeah. There's something going on with simulation and all of that stuff. It was discussed a lot in movies in the 90s.
A lot of parallel thinking going on, yeah.
Yeah. I thought about that. I watched it a few months ago and hadn't seen it since then, since I saw it at the cinema, and it shocked me. I think it was wasted on me a little bit, I think, when I was 14, 15 years old. I liked it fine, but watching it this time, I was kind of blown away by the concepts that they were discussing. And it's kind of all about, in a similar way to this, what is base reality and what is not, and who are you in that reality? How does that affect your identity? Fascinating. I think I was much the same. I would have been a teenager when I first saw it as well. And I think to me, it was just like, oh, body horror and ew, dead fish. Yeah. And that would have been the extent of my deep thoughts on that. I think I was completely different because I was like, oh, Tooth Gun. Jennifer Jason Leigh. Hello.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Jude Law. Yeah.
Yeah. But Existence is one that I was thinking about this too. Obviously, like you said, we mentioned Matrix, and people have compared those two movies over and over again. So I'm going to say less about that. But Existence is one that I've not heard mentioned in relation to this so much, and I think that it's got way more in common with it than people give it credit for.
Yeah,
I think it's all about simulation argument. I think that movie and how it affects us personally.
Yeah, even stuff like Total Recall. I don't know if that's just in my brain because we watched it recently, but
yeah, I agree with that.
That sort of covers some of the same themes at the very least.
Well, again, I think that's based on a Philip K. Dick story, and Philip K. Dick was a big simulation guy. He believed in simulation. He believed in a lot of stuff. And yeah, I was going to, not True Lies. Total Recall is an interesting one to bring up. We did watch it recently, and it was one that I was considering for this season.
Was it? Is that why we watched it?
Yeah, essentially, because it was one that I was considering, and I wanted to have it in our back pocket for comparison, and the Philip K. Dick thing, and also the rap show, and again, that fits in because what is real and what's not, and that's interesting how that sort of ties in with dreams as well, and that's why this movie is in this season, in our dream season, is because of the distinction or lack of distinction between what we dream and when we dream. It's real for, unless you're lucid dreaming, which few can do, it's real to us. It may as well be another reality that we experience at night, and it is that. So how that's not really different to putting on a headset and going into another reality. Interesting.
Okay. Do you have any more thoughts on the 13th Floor before we start wrapping up and cut to a Cardigan's outro jump scare?
No, I don't think so. I've written down some reviews by other people that I thought were interesting, but do you know what? I might skip those.
Maybe save those for the rap show then.
Should I save them for the rap show?
Yeah. I'm interested.
I will say that, but I don't want to get anyone's hopes up, because what will happen is I'll just completely forget about it.
I'm just really happy that you've stopped waffling about this supposed companion show that we were apparently going to do.
Oh yeah, completely forgot about that. Yeah, we've got 2 more shows in our dreams season. Next week we're actually going to do a movie that's about dreams and not something related to dreams. We're covering our first Christopher Nolan movie, Inception.
No.
So tonight we're going to finish off the last 40 minutes of Tenet in preparation for that show.
I might have a breakdown.
Yeah, you might have a breakdown. But yeah, so next week, Inception.
I'm grateful that the cyberpunk is done with for now.